A reading from the first book of Samuel. In those days, Hannah conceived, and at the end of her term bore a son, whom she called Samuel, since she had asked the Lord for him. The next time her husband Elkanah was going up with the rest of his household to offer the customary sacrifice to the Lord and to fulfill his vows, Hannah did not go, explaining to her husband, "Once the child is weaned, I will take him to appear before the Lord and to remain there forever. I will offer him up as a perpetual Nazirite." Once Samuel was weaned, Hannah brought him up with her, along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine, and presented him at the temple of the Lord in Shiloh. After the baby's father had sacrificed the young bull, Hannah, his mother, approached Eli and said, "Pardon, my lord. As you live, my lord, I am the woman who stood near you here praying to the Lord. I prayed for a child, and the Lord granted my request. Now I, in turn, give him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he shall be dedicated to the Lord." Hannah left Samuel there. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Blessed are they who dwell in your house, O Lord. Blessed are they who dwell in your house, O Lord. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord of hosts. My soul yearns and pines for the courts of the Lord. My heart, my flesh cries out for the living God. Blessed are they who dwell in your house, O Lord. Happy they who dwell in your house, continually they praise you. Happy the man whose strength you are. Their hearts are set upon the pilgrimage. Blessed are they who dwell in your house, O O God of Jacob, O Lord, behold our shield, and look upon the face of your anointed. Blessed are they who dwell in your house, O
A reading from the first letter of St. John. Beloved, see what love the Father has bestowed on us, that we may be called the children of God. And so we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him. Beloved, we are God's children now. what we shall be has not yet been revealed. We do know that when it is revealed, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. Beloved, if our hearts do not condemn us, we have confidence in God and receive from him whatever we ask, because we keep his commandments and do what pleases him. And his commandment is this: we should believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another just as he commanded us. Those who keep his commandments remain in him, and he in them. And the way we know that he remains in us is from the Spirit he gave us. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
Each year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the feast of Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up according to festival custom. After they had completed its days as they were returning, the boy Jesus remained behind in Jerusalem, but his parents did not know it. Thinking that he was in the caravan, they journeyed for a day and looked for him among their relatives and acquaintances, but not finding him, they returned to Jerusalem to look for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were astounded at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, "Son, why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been looking for you with great anxiety." And he said to them, "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" But they did not understand what he said to them. He went down with them and came to Nazareth and was obedient to them. And his mother kept all these things in her heart. And Jesus advanced in wisdom and age and favor before God and man. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Well, Merry Christmas. I'm sure as you are aware that while the rest of the world is already grinding up their Christmas trees, we have just begun our celebration of this great season that we have this weekend, of course, the Feast of the Holy Family. Next weekend, the Feast of Epiphany. And we will end our Christmas season, I think it's around January 12 or 13, with the Feast of the Baptism of the Lord. But as I say, today, we keep the Christmas feast of the most holy family of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. And we have this wonderful little story from Luke's gospel, which really, between the birth stories of Jesus and him appearing as an adult in the gospels, this is the only little glimpse we get into the family life that they had when Jesus was a child and growing up. This is about it. If you are one of those who prays the rosary, you know that this story, the finding of the child Jesus in the temple, is the fifth joyful mystery. Now, I will admit, when I first heard that, I sort of was like, what? Because, granted, there was probably some relief and great joy on the part of Mary and Joseph when they finally found Jesus after searching for him for 3 days. But it seemed to me that this mystery could have some other titles attached to it, like the mystery of the frustration of trying to raise children, or the mystery of, young man, what do you think you're doing? Or the mystery of, dear God, the angel never told me about this, right? I mean, those of you who have children, you are very much aware that there are great mysteries in trying to raise a family and keep a family running. They are joyful, they are glorious, and they are also sorrowful, trying to raise a family and be part of a family. I mean, if you think about the life of Mary and Joseph just in their family, the mysteries are there, all kinds of them. We could put together a whole another decade, I think, with the mystery of, could someone please explain to me why he went into the wilderness among the animals all by himself? Or the mystery of, I know he said his time has not yet come, but a wedding needs wine. Or a mystery of, did he really call everybody in the room, his brothers and his sisters and his mother? The mystery of, son, why are you letting them kill you? The mysteries that go along with life, the mysteries of being unique individuals in unique families and trying to figure out how that all unfolds and how it all holds together. I really think this Feast of the Holy Family gives us a chance to pause with the mystery of family, because we believe that no less so than God gave Jesus to Mary and Joseph for their keeping, so did he give to you every member of your family and every member of your family to you. That you can be no less holy than Mary and Joseph and Jesus were. Whether your family is enormous with busloads of relatives, or whether your family is very small and nuclear, or whether your family is well beyond blood relations, you have to remember that when Jesus did say to the whole room, these are my mother, my brothers, my sisters, he was referring to all of us who try to do God's will, all of us who by baptism are a family, a parish family. And I know the word family can be a hot button for some people, especially coming this close on the heels of Christmas, where it could have been a spectacular experience of family or a barely tolerable experience of family. But family shapes who we are. And so whether you have a wonderful experience of family or a dysfunctional experience of family, family is important. And it can be easy for us to forget as we go through the rest of this year hearing Luke's gospel that Jesus came from a family, that he was a kid, that he had to grow up. Again, it's easy to forget that because this is the only story we have of him as a kid at the age of 12. But he grew up in a particular place, a neighborhood called Nazareth, with particular individuals, Joseph and Mary and their neighbors. He had as his prayer book the book of Psalms, and I would say that probably his faith formation or religious education, or CCD if you go back that far, would be the Old Testament, the stories about the heroes of his faith that were there for him. He was shaped by his religion, by his culture. He was an obedient son to an obedient Jewish family. It was with Joseph and Mary that he first learned to walk, that he was first hugged, that he was first loved, that he first experienced all those things you experience in a family. And I love that Luke tells us he advanced. He advanced in grace and wisdom and knowledge before God and man, which means on any given day, he was not yet put together as well as he would be. He was still learning. There were still places to go. He made mistakes, not sinful ones, but mistakes all the same, like wandering away and not telling his parents where he was going for 3 days and scaring the heck out of them. He had to grow. In fact, I love that the story we do get about his youth is this one, on this feast of the Holy Family. Because we can imagine a holy family, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, being perfect and ideal, without any problems, without any difficulties. But a family is holy not because it's perfect, without any difficulties or without any problems. It's holy because it takes seriously God's presence at the center of it and tries to live that reality. You end up today with a story about parents who are befuddled, confused, upset, anxious, searching, and a son who doesn't understand why they're that way. Why are you looking for me? Didn't you know I had to be here? What? Talking at cross purposes. That's the Holy Family. What made them holy was that God was at the center of their life, and they tried to live as God called them to. And that's actually part of where the problem comes in today. I mean, I hope that you have never misplaced or lost a child. That can be terrifying. If you haven't, this story still speaks to us, I think. At least symbolically, what's happening here. Because when Joseph and Mary find Jesus, the struggle they have is simply this, that Jesus is, to use the words of the story, no longer journeying with them. That is to say, he's beginning to discover for himself at the age of 12 who he is and who God calls him to be. And as parents, you know, that can be tough as a child starts to discover who they are and maybe acts in ways that would not be the ways you would choose for them to act. Joseph and Mary, I think, are having to begin to realize that even though God gave them Jesus for them to care for him and want the best for him, Jesus does not belong to them. That he is beginning to discover who he is. And as much as he may be son of Joseph and Mary, he's even more so son of God. And they need to let God's will in his life begin to play out. We have another example of that today in the first reading. Hannah and her son Samuel. What's really interesting about Hannah is that in her longing for a son, in her longing for her shame to be taken away from her, she prays to God for a child. But at the same time, and this may sound strange to our way of thinking, promises God that God can have that child. And we hear today that as soon as Samuel is weaned, she takes him to God to leave him with God. Long before anything she might want for Samuel, she recognizes that God, if she is given a child, will have a plan for that child, for the good of that child and the good of the world. And because of that understanding and that gesture, from that small family comes Samuel, who becomes a prophet and a king in the Davidic line. Only much later will Israel look back on that with hindsight and see how significant that was, that Hannah made room for God to move in her child's life and make things happen. I've shared with you before, just in October when we had my mother's funeral right here, that, and I hadn't seen the parallels before until this week, when my mom was pregnant with me, there was no guarantee she was going to give birth to me. It was questionable. And she explained to me, she told me, that she had said to God, "Dear God, please let me have this child, and you can do with him whatever you want." She told me that the morning of my ordination, right? And I will tell you quite honestly, between being a kid and a teenager and a young adult, there were probably 18 different things that I thought I wanted to do with my life. This was not one of them. But somehow, living in a family and a parish family and a place where people supported what God might be doing, I seem to have ended up doing what I'm supposed to be doing. It plays out that way. It can be confusing. It can be scary. It can be befuddling. It can be anxious. It can be not what you expected. But it turns out to be that God is at work for your good, the good of the world, and quite honestly, it's how we work out our salvation, by following God's lead. I guess what I'm really trying to say, and I don't mean to sound trite, and I know you've heard this 1,000 times, but as it turns out, God really does have a plan for your life. And if you manage to figure it out, it really works well. It really works well. I mean, parents, are you open to any possibility God might call your children to? As an uncle, as a grandparent, as an aunt, as a godparent? Are you supportive in helping your children figure out, how is God working here? How has God gifted you? What does God want for you? You want your children to be happy. Yes, agreed. Successful? Absolutely. Make a difference in the world? Right there. Do you also consider, how am I going to help them get to heaven? How can I help my child, my son, my daughter, my godchild, my niece, my nephew become saints? I've mentioned this to you before. We spend a lot of time asking kids from the time they're small up into college, what do you want to do? What do you think you want to be when you grow up? We can bring faith into that, to make sure God is part of that by simply tweaking the question. What do you think God wants you to do? What do you think God wants you to be when you grow up? Include God in that whole process, right? He's got a plan. He wants us to know it. We can find it. Are you open to wherever God may call you? This example is not by any means to say that priesthood or being a brother or sister is the only thing that God calls people to. Not at all. But I've had conversations with parents where one of the things that they almost unconsciously and not intentionally have moved off the table as a possibility for their child is religious life. Being a sister, a brother, or a priest, for a couple reasons. They would never use this word, but when they talk, it's the word that I hear, and that is they want, again, they would never say this, but better for their child. By that, they sort of mean they want their child to be happy, and they think that's going to involve more money, a position of prestige, more material things. Or, and I've been told this directly, I want grandchildren. So suddenly, the possibility that God might be calling a sister, a brother, a priest is off the table, not supported, not part of the conversation. We have to be careful we take nothing off the table of what God may want. All right, parents, godparents, aunts, uncles, etc. Students, teenagers, kids, young adults. Have you ever thought about, or are you even interested in knowing, what God may want for your life? I know from personal experience, it's really easy to think about everything you want for your life, what you want to do. Like I said, I could make a list of 18 things. Are you curious what God may have in mind for you? I know it's hard because we are asked constantly, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do when you grow up? What college are you going to go to? What degree are you going to get? What are you going to pursue? And many of you I know are amazing people of faith. You humble me with your faith sometimes. And I know you ask God, please bless what I'm trying to do here. Awesome. Thank you for that. But again, I challenge you to turn it up just a little bit, twist it around. Instead of asking God to bless the life you lead, ask God to lead you to the life He blesses. Put Him in charge for a while. It's been said, if God is your co-pilot, you're in the wrong seat. You're in the wrong seat. And for anyone who might be interested in where God may want you and what God may want you to do, here's a good starting point. What are you passionate about? What lights you up? What profound interest that God has given you that makes you go, this is where I feel most alive and most remarkable. If you can figure out where your passion and a real serious, deep need of the world come together, that's a great place to start looking. That's a great place to start looking. When your passion and your skills intersect with a real need the world has, that's somewhere where God can get to work. It's mysterious, but oh, what an adventure. It's joyful. It is sorrowful. It is glorious. Family life and growing up is very much God's purpose, very much God's business, and very much God's interest. Again, our families aren't holy because they're perfect. We're not a family of church that's holy because we're perfect. Families are holy because they take God's presence in the center of their life seriously and try to walk as He would direct. It's a mystery that leads us to holiness and to eternal life. If you take the example and try to imitate the Holy Family today, we know God was at the center of it. Didn't mean it was problem-free, didn't mean it was smooth sailing, but it did mean it changed the world forever and brought Jesus, Mary, and Joseph to life eternal in the kingdom of heaven.